Kevin Kinkead, Crossing Broad. He covers the 76ers, among other things that he does for CrossingBroad.com. He writes, do younger Eagles fans share our distaste for the Dallas Cowboys? Now, we've talked a lot about this article today and just the fandom around the area and the origin of this quote-unquote rivalry, one of which I think is really like a hallmark rivalry. I think it's a manufactured hate. I don't think if we went to Dallas that they view the Eagle fans the same way. But the question he brings is a fair one. Do the younger fans even care about this anymore?
Well, I don't know if the younger fans care about anything anymore.
That's true.
Let alone the Cowboys game. That's a bigger conversation.
Let's bring Kevin Kinkead in on the Boardwalk on the hotline and get his take on this. It is Dallas week, Kevin, but it just feels a little different, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe I'm out of touch. Maybe these people love this rivalry and are fired up about it.
Well, this might be my first old man yells at the cloud. I turned 35 last month, but I'm feeling more like 55 or 60 because my cranky grumpy old men moment is that I don't think people are riled up enough about an old divisional matchup. It just doesn't seem like Dallas week has the same juice that it used to.
I kind of feel like
what was the juice though? So Kevin's 35, you're 42. Sorry to throw that out there. But what was the juice, guys? I mean, you're not that much older than me, but what's the difference?
The juice was that Dallas used to be good back in the day.
True,
so, I think you're looking at a cutoff point and so if let's take me, for instance. I was born in 1984. I'm 35 right now. And so I was old enough to remember when Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin were wiping the floor with everybody. You were 11 or 12 or 13 years old when they were winning the Super Bowl in 93, 95, and 96. So, you grew up with them kind of being the evil empire, and you saw dudes walking around Boyertown, Pennsylvania, for whatever the hell reason, wearing a Dallas Cowboys jersey, even though Boyertown was not remotely close to Dallas or Texas or anything down there, So, it's just kind of this proliferation of weasels who jumped on the bandwagon because they were a good team, and even though you had that kind of lingering distaste for the Cowboys, but the fact of the matter was that they just were not good for a long period of time. I mean, it's really as simple as that, isn't it? They have 4 playoff wins, 10 playoff losses since that last Super Bowl. So how can you be a front runner for a team that really isn't any good? I mean, that's kind of antithetical. If they're not good, they can't be a front runner. And so, eventually those guys who were driving around up and down Route 100 with the bumper sticker of the Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Lakers, and then you had the Notre Dame football, and then
and
the
Barcelona
Yankees on there. FC Barcelona, coming into my world with that. That kind of just went away because they just weren't any good,
Yeah. Now, interesting. So you're kind of right in the middle of us, Kevin, with the age in terms of Ryan's 29 and. The Cowboys have never been good since he's been alive. They've never been relevant. So it's interesting and odd where these fans of that, where the people who are in that age bracket, where would they have latched on to a team that's never been good?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what the cutoff point is. I did a poll on Twitter yesterday that is probably not scientifically accurate. Number one, because it's a poll, and number two, because it's Twitter. But I asked people under 30 to weigh in and say, do you look at this the same way that we do? The answers were yes, I hate Dallas. No, I don't hate Dallas. And the third answer was I hate other teams more. And it was 81% that said they hate Dallas, 10% that said they don't, and 9 whatever numbers left said that they had another team that they hated more. So it's interesting, if you were born in 90, say you were born in 95 or 96 or 97 or something like that, you were a teenager, I guess, that if my math is right, when the Giants were winning a couple Super Bowls, right? So I think you probably saw them as a more competitive team, even though they're winning titles, but they weren't amazing in the regular season, which is kind of weird. But you saw more success during your lifetime.
And by the way, the Eagles had a lot of success against the Giants, even when they were winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, which is strange to me why people would bring up the Giants, but then on the other hand, they bring up the Patriots and they say, well, I hate the Patriots. But the difference is that you don't see dude walking around Egg Harbor Township wearing a Patriots jersey.
Right. We brought that up earlier is why the people were if you ask somebody that lives around here, why do you like the Cowboys? Well, they were on TV, and a lot of them don't want to say, well, because they were good. But the Patriots have been good for 20 years, and yet no one seems to have latched onto them as the team that they're going to bandwagon. Why are the Patriots not a bandwagon jump? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's like a hyper-regional kind of thing. I think it's just kind of isolated to New England. Like my cousin lives in Iowa, and he became a Cowboys fan. I'm sitting here thinking, how does somebody in Iowa become a Cowboys fan? Why aren't there Patriots fans in Iowa, right? Because you would think, aren't you going to latch on to a front runner and a good team no matter what? But for some reason, it was just that America's team kind of like all-American. We don't have anybody else to root for. We're going to kind of jump on the Cowboys bandwagon, yes, because they're good. I see them on television every week. My mom, went to college with like Nate Newton's cousin or some BS along those lines or something, But I don't know. For some reason, like the Northeast just kind of has this hyper local geographic kind of mindset, whereas in other parts of the country they really don't. I wrote in the column. It was interesting because I went down to Texas last year for the West Virginia Texas games. We were in Austin. And a lot of the people we were sitting around were Cowboy fans. I didn't run into a single Houston Texans fan, which is strange to me. I don't know if they exist outside of Houston. But I got to be honest, like the Cowboy fans I met down in Texas were some of the nicest, smartest people I've ever been around when it comes to football. So it just kind of, and they explained to me that, they don't really see the Eagles game as a rivalry necessarily because it's more of, they think that our distrust of the Cowboys is more because like there's an infestation of people up here in the Northeast who just jumped on the bandwagon but don't have anything to do with Texas at all.
How do they view those people?
They don't like them either.
Because I agree with you. Like, I went to college with a guy who was a Redskins fan, and the Redskins-Cowboys thing is way bigger than like in Dallas. They could care less about the Eagles. That's why I feel that the Eagles should not care about the Cowboys. Like we make it too big of a deal. They don't care about us, but I think we care because there's all these Cowboy fans that were like, "Why the hell are you a Cowboy fan?" But what do the Cowboy fans in Dallas think about these idiots?
They don't like him either. So it's kind of like you're fighting like a war on. Well, it's like three different factions here, if you will. It's like you have Cowboys fans who are from Texas or grew up down there and actually know the team and have a cultural and geographic connection to the team. So that's one faction. Then you have Philadelphia Eagles fans who are the same way. Grew up here, never left here, probably have been vacationing at the same spot down the shore for 40 straight years, right? So and then you have the third group of people, which is Cowboys fans up here, right? But the Cowboys fans down there said, look, we don't have Eagles fans down here. Like there are no expat front-runner bandwagon Eagles fans in the Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, Waco, whatever area, right? So they don't experience that kind of front-runner mentality that we do up there. So they don't like those people. We don't like those people. But for their purposes, they kind of see it as a one-sided rivalry because they don't get the other half of it that we do.
But the Cowboys, Kevin, are a team that, like you said, it's in the 70s where there's only a certain amount of teams on TV, and then there's certain organizations in the past that have had a ton of success. And the Cowboys, another team is the Dolphins. Like, I run into people all the time. I'm a Dolphins fan. Dude, why are you a Dolphins fan? Well, my dad loved Dan Marino, or my dad loved the 70s team. I think that's similar to, like, the Cowboys answer.
Yeah, and you I think the next two teams that you would list if you were going down there, you'd say the Steelers. Yep. You find Pittsburgh Steelers fans who are kind of the same mindset. I had friends growing up who were San Francisco 49ers fans.
Yeah,
because of Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and Steve Young and stuff like that. But I've always found that to be corny. Like I sit here and think, am I like being an idiot by saying like you can only cheer for this team or you should cheer for this team? I'm like, who the hell am I to be like the tribunal of fandom, like the arbiter of fandom?
Right.
But then you sit back and you ask yourself, well, if people are just finding random teams to support, why aren't there any Calgary Flames fans out there? Because ain't nobody picking a crappy ice hockey team.
Speak for yourself, man.
Pick a
right.
No, it's like why don't anybody?
I have a Johnny Gaudreau jersey in my bedroom.
Yeah.
No, it's just like but I guess I don't understand it. Like I said, when I was growing up, I was a huge Roger Clemens fan. But that didn't mean that the Red Sox were my favorite team. Like, I always find these people who are like, well, I like because they were in the 70s and they had Staubach and they were on the Star and they were on TV. Okay, that's great, but why did you stick with it? Like, what is it? And now the interesting part is the team isn't any good. They haven't been good for 25 years.
Well, as if that's a reason, just because you like the guy, that's a reason that you have to be a fan of the team. Why can't you just say, I like the guy and I like the way he plays?
Exactly.
That's the difference of, to take it in a direction that you guys may not be familiar with, but I think you'll be able to understand. When the English Premier League was becoming popular over here and people were starting to pay attention, one of the ways that they were selling people on it was to say, well, you should pick a team. Pick a team and follow it.
Yes.
And they gave you all these guides, ESPN page 2 or whatever. Bill Simmons wrote 2,000 words on why you should be a Tottenham fan or something like that. Maybe that ropes people into it because they have a rooting interest. But again, how many of those people had ever been to London? So I don't get that either. I'm a believer that you don't have to have a team to enjoy something or enjoy one specific athlete or appreciate what they do on the field. If you grew up playing sports and you know what it takes to accomplish something, I can watch Joe Montana from the other side of the country and say, hey, I like him and I appreciate him as a player, but I don't got to go out and buy his jersey.
Right. And what's funny because one of our producers here, Hunter Brody, he just latched on to, I think it's Everton. Is that a team?
Yeah, that's a team.
Yeah.
Do I sound like I know what I'm talking about?
So far.
You
so
do.
far.
Okay.
Is Tim Howard the goalie there?
He was, yeah.
Okay.
Man, we are killing it.
Yeah, man.
Wow, you know so much about soccer.
I
man.
mean, let's just end it here.
I am the soccer aficionado of this show. So anyway, yeah, he just said he just latched onto a team like, hey, I'm just going to be an Everton fan, and he knows the ins and outs. Like, oh, they're like kind of like the team that's almost getting relegated, and like they're not very good.
But that's what you have to do in America if you're following that sport. I went to college at WVU, as you guys know very well. I had a ton of friends who kind of brought me on to the soccer world just by force when I was there, and they just had random teams because obviously there's no geographical connection, but you can still appreciate the sport.
No, but
maybe that's a unique case, where it's like, nobody over here is going to have any geographical connection, obviously. So why don't we find this connection in general? I've just always been somebody who enjoys watching things without a rooting interest because after like 30 years of West Virginia disappointment, I do enjoy just watching a game and not being emotionally tied to it.
Yes. Now, like the moral of this whole thing is like the origin of where the Cowboy fans come from. How did they end up here? Why? I feel like they just don't like Eagles fans. But isn't the whole, like, if you were to do like a long form story here, Kevin, like sports and being a fan is about having civic pride. So it's like, why the hell did you choose to live here if you're claiming you don't like the people that you live with? It almost makes you look like a fool.
Well, it's not, simply put, I think that the most simple explanation is that they're contrarians. That they don't like.
I don't think they're smart enough to be contrarians. You ever talk to a Cowboy fan?
But that a lot of people push back on the idea that you have to cheer for Philadelphia teams or South Jersey teams just because you grew up here. I mean, like, people think that's a corny explanation too, and so they push back on it and say, "I'm going to pick whoever I want." Who are you to tell me that I can root for just because I grew up in Collingswood or something like that? So you do have like a portion of people now who are like, you go so far to one end of the spectrum that you come around to the other end, and people are saying, "Well, I'm not going to do this just because you think it's the right way." But I just think it's corny that you would just pick a team that you don't have any kind of connection to at all, just because you can watch them on like NBA League Pass or whatever.
Well,
so
right. That's where the civic pride comes in. It's like it should. Where you live, and the whole part about sports is where the team is good and everybody's at the supermarket wearing the jersey and everyone's out having a beer, watching the game together.
Correct.
Not the guy next door saying, "Well, I don't like you because you're an Eagles fan." Well, you chose to live here. I live here and I'm cheering for the team that's like, I'm the normal person here.
When I got all bent out of shape writing like column after column about the Eagles getting rid of training camp and people were telling me to get the hell over myself already, I was adamant. I was like, no. When you're a 10-year-old kid and you go to Westchester, you go to Lehigh Valley or whatever the hell, and Reggie White hands you his like dirty shoulder pads and says, "Hey kid, carry these to the bunk for me." I mean, it sounds stupid, but that's like a formative moment that
like
kid remembers for the rest of their life.
Right. Yeah. Was that the Mean Joe Green with the Coke?
Like the Mean Joe Green commercial.
But you can't have that. You can't create that moment if you're a 49ers fan and you're living in New Jersey. Like, it just doesn't happen. So for everything about, so now we can watch anything anytime we want. We can see anything on Red Zone. We can see stuff on League Pass. You still cannot have that formative moment of, for example, today, Ben Simmons going to a local elementary school and handing out 600 coats or something like that. You create fans for life because you have the opportunity to have these interactions with players that you just don't have if you're the Calgary Flames fan from Mays Landing.
Kevin Kinkead, crossingbroad.com. Check out that article. He also covers the Sixers, and you were there last night, so let's get a couple quick observations. If people haven't been watching the preseason, what are some of the things, in the NFL preseason, we can't take a lot. How much of the NBA preseason can we take and say, this I saw, and therefore it is going to happen in a real game?
Not a ton, especially when you're playing against the Guangzhou Lions or the Detroit Pistons without Andre Drummond or Blake Griffin. But you do look at these guys in person and you see what the Sixers look like collectively as a unit that is just monolithically large and athletic, and you see some of the defensive things that they're able to do. You see Tobias Harris being able to easily switch onto a 6'5" guy and just drive him right down into the lane and hit from 4 feet out. They look like they're going to be really, really damn good, for a lack of better words. Josh Richardson handled the ball last night, which was interesting to see to me, because that could be an option that they go back to, the way that they had Jimmy Butler kind of back up Ben Simmons last year. Joel Embiid and Al Horford, how are they going to manage those minutes? It's interesting to me because everybody's just like, well, Joel comes out of the game, Al Horford goes down and plays a 5, but you got to rest Al Horford too, because he's 33 going on 34. He ain't no spring chicken. So Kyle O'Quinn's probably going to play more minutes than I think people are going to realize. I think Josh Richardson is probably a better off-ball mover than people think. I think he'll be able to do some of those J.J. Redick kind of things in the handoff and DHO game, but you look at Matisse Thybulle, James Ennis coming off the bench, Mike Scott. I mean, this is a really deep defensive unit. I mean, there's no reason to think that this team can't be number 1, number 2 defensive and rebounding team this year.
Kevin, what are your thoughts on the depth, as you just kind of mentioned there briefly? And more importantly for me is, great, this team is going to be a nightmare on the defensive end. They're long, athletic, and for the most part young outside of Horford. But where's the offense coming from, specifically in half-court sets?
Yeah, that's really the question, isn't it? I mean, speaking first of depth, I mean, I don't know where the bench scoring is coming from necessarily, unless we're relying on Mike Scott to hit a bunch of three-pointers, catch-and-shoot three-pointers. If Matisse Thybulle hits a couple catch-and-shoot three-pointers, I mean, who's the best offensive piece on the bench right now? Is it Furkan Korkmaz?
Oh boy!
As far as like pure shooting is concerned, I mean, it might be him and Mike Scott, but. Yeah, it's interesting. I think Tobias Harris has to take a step this year. I mean, I keep beating this point to death, but I don't think a lot of people knew what he was doing in Los Angeles last year before he came over here. I mean, he was shooting 40% from 3. He was really, really, like, he was. If there was one more All-Star added to the All-Star game, it would have been him. And I think at times last year he was kind of deferential, with Jimmy Butler seeing a lot of the ball, Ben Simmons seeing a lot of the ball. I mean, everybody's needing a lot of the ball in that lineup, but there's no reason to think that on a new contract, a big, fat new contract, with him now playing small forward and getting some more favorable matchups there, I mean, there's no reason to think that he can't be a go-to guy. He's got to be more assertive than he was last year, and you see how he attacks closeout. They have the size to be able to do that, play after play after play. So if you're asking me who are we drawing something up for, in the fourth quarter, I mean, right now I'm going with him.
So if I was the Dallas Cowboy fan listening, and I wasn't very bright, and I was listening to this conversation about the Sixers, if I saw on Twitter last night Norvel Pell's name, would I surmise that this guy is something and going to help this team out?
I don't know. I mean, people know that Norvel is 26 years old, right? I mean, he's not some guy who's like just coming up right now. He had some stints in Europe and he played over there. But if we're paring the team down and I'm giving you Jonah Bolden versus Norvel Pell right now, I don't think Bolden's played any better than Norvel Pell through the preseason so far. I mean, he's athletic. He's a shot blocker. He's a rim protector. You're one Joel Embiid or Al Horford injury away from, possibly needing another guy behind Kyle O'Quinn. So, depending on how they see the power forward depth chart, I mean, Norvel Pell might not be a bad answer for you this year in spots.
All right, Kevin Kinkead, a fine WVU grad. By the way, I once went to the bathroom next to Amos Zaraway.
I heard about that. Yeah, Ryan was sharing some tales about a person that he knows from West Virginia who did some things down there.
Some questionable things.
Yeah.
That's right.
There you go. So that's my claim to West Virginia fame there. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I like this text. When you're 10 years old, you don't think about civic pride when picking your favorite team. Mike, go get fatter than you already are. Well, guess what?
That's
At
nice.
10 years old, I might have thought one way, and then I got smart enough to change my opinion that being a fan of a team from out of the area was stupid and idiotic, you idiot.
Civic pride when you're young just happens organically. You're not like, well, I live on this
Right.
block.
The
so
floggings will continue until your morale improves, you jackass. All right, Kevin,
Wow.
you're a nice man.